the white pieces. Here we go.
Here we go, and Magnus, wow, he starts with one G3. Not what we're used to seeing from him, not occupying the center, but he's freestyling the world champion. He's played this before on the tour, and okay, with his last move, he goes back into more well-known territory, the Reti opening. And here we see both sides finally starting to take control of the center.
I was going to ask, is it a little bit like 1B3?
It's exactly the same idea, just on the other side, kind of mirror image. White's whole idea by pushing the g-pawn forward is to create a nice home for the white bishop. And look how black has played copycat, a fianchetto for black as well. Both sides are about to put their bishops on the longest diagonals. But this last move by Jorden is very, very rare. Normally black there brought out the light squared bishop. That would have gone into what we call the Chigorin opening. And, OK, Magnus just taking a pause. Will he push a pawn? Will he bring white's light squared bishop out to that nice hole on fianchetto on g2? Simon, are you surprised by this opening choice by either side?
A little bit surprised, yeah. I mean, not so much from Magnus, because he kind of played this way in the World Championships, as I know you're aware, because you've had this kind of opening set up. But Jorden playing this last move is, as you say, a bit odd, because you're going to move your bishop. And one of the long-term problems black can have in this kind of structure is that knight that he's brought out, because that black knight that's come out, it gets in the way of the pawn. And often you want to use the pawn behind the knight to either secure your centre or to play a bit more aggressively and attack white's centre, which he can't do now. So it's a different setup, but obviously been prepared because he's played it immediately.
Yeah. He's actually, just checking the database, he's actually played it before Jorden has. He played it in a blitz game against Gata Kamsky. A famous grandmaster from the USA.
Yeah, and meanwhile, both sides did develop their bishops, and white has castled the king. So Jorden maybe having predicted this, because Magnus did set up this way twice against him in Vaikanze in January over the board, and he also set up this way against him in the tour earlier this season. So Jorden not surprised, but he's surprising Magnus.
Wow.
And I've actually, every time I faced Jorden, I set up like this against him with white, because he's such a fearsome attacking player, and here white's king is so safe, it's unlikely he can checkmate you at least.
And Air Things telling us that the air quality inside the Oslo Esports arena is very good. The temperature is nice, 23 degrees Celsius, but Magnus has actually put on his coat. So does that mean that he is still a little bit sick and not feeling very well?
Yeah, for viewers who have followed the tour in the past, we've seen on his Air Things device, normally when he's at home, he likes it warm. He likes it 26 degrees and upwards. So maybe not feeling great, but also maybe just a personal preference.
That's true.
OK, Magnus, meanwhile, just pushing a pawn is kind of, yeah, a bit of symmetry here. He wants to fianchetto his other bishop, potentially, and put that one on the longest diagonal. Yeah,
and I guess we're going to have quite a manoeuvring game, which should suit Magnus quite well. All the pieces remain on the board. He's just getting his pieces out, get into the middle game, and then he's going to try to do his magic there, possibly taking advantage, as I mentioned, of that black knight that came out early. Could be misplaced in quite a lot of positions.
And meanwhile, Jorden just bringing his rook across. That last one's a bit mysterious. Maybe black can use his pawn in front of that black rook and push it towards the centre later, but that's not really an immediate threat. So, OK, Magnus slightly frowning, just coming up with a plan here. Will white push a pawn? Will white develop the queenside knight? The knight's still asleep. Magnus just doesn't look comfortable. And in his interview, were you guys surprised when Sverre asked, are you feeling ready? He said no.
Yeah.
It's rare to hear that kind of thing from the world champion.
Yeah, that's true, actually. But normally you say those type of things anyhow when someone goes, you know, just to kind of give yourself that little pass in case things go wrong. But yeah, normally that we hear the world champion saying, I am the best.
Yeah.
But OK. Well,
it does seem a little off, maybe, yeah?
Yeah, maybe. And anyhow, well, Jorden is playing in a very, very committal style. He's now exploding open, everything in the centre.
Yeah, and look at Magnus's body language. He just kind of put his head on his own shoulder right there. I've got to say, either this is great preparation from Jorden van Foreest, or it's just a big bluff. Because black has sacrificed a pawn temporarily. The evaluation bar really not liking it for black. And we have to jump in to show what's happening here. It looks like Jorden, he's about to solve all of his problems unless Magnus gets greedy and takes this pawn. And he's got to take it, right? I'm assuming he'll take with his knight just to open up this bishop and to create another square that was previously occupied for this knight. And after we see a trade, Jordan's idea is surely to jump forward with the black knight and hitting this pawn in the center. This pawn is pinned, after all. It cannot move. Whoops, me and my arrows there. This pawn is pinned along this diagonal, and actually there's no way to save it. If you march this pawn forward to protect it, to create this nice little chain, then suddenly you leave a weakness on this square and you walk into a fork, a double attack. And actually we're headed towards this position. This is the current position. Black's knight has indeed jumped forward. But here, what happens if white, for example, brings the knight over to defend this pawn in the center? I think I've seen something very similar to this before, not this exact position, but now if we do see a bunch of trades in the middle of the board, seeing everything come off the board, then white does eventually have ideas such as pushing this pawn forward, maybe even pushing this pawn forward, destabilizing the black rook in order to try and win this pawn later on. Some definite ideas here for Magnus. Jorden surely has prepared this position before.
Yeah, he must have done with his time because he's actually up on time. And I guess he's got confidence in holding this position, only needing a draw. He's got lots of pieces off the board. I think the continuation you mentioned, David, is certainly the most logical continuation. But, I mean, it would seem to me that this is also a Magnus position, and Magnus has no weaknesses, and that pawn on the analysis board in the middle could be a real problem in the long run, with white being able to pressurise that. It's a little bit too extended, even in some situations. So, will we see this? And if so, will Jorden be able to hold the position?
Yep, it's all about whether that pawn is a weakness long term. So in the current position, we're expecting this move from Magnus, bringing the knight over to defend this pawn. And even if there are trades, then still a lot of life left. It's all about whether Magnus can seize the moment and do something over the next few moves before Jorden really gets comfortable as black.
Magnus is not too used with being in must-win situations, right?
I mean, he's normally in the lead.
Yeah.
Usually he's in the lead, but we have seen some amazing comebacks by Magnus. I can remember, I think it was the FTX Cup, I want to say, when he won 8 times on demand. And I think he's the only player to have ever won, I mean, like this. Yeah. I mean, because he...
There have been a few finals against Wesley So where he needed to win just to stay in it. And sometimes he didn't manage, but sometimes he did.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if anyone's capable of winning with white in a must-win situation, it is Magnus. But it's not easy for anyone at this level.
Yeah, I remember his dad. I talked to his dad, Henrik Carlsen, once, and he said, you know, people are just expecting Magnus to win, and even to just play a draw on demand at this level is actually very hard. Obviously, you're forced to not make any mistakes.
And the opponent has a say in it too. So if the opponent plays well, there's no guarantee you can win. Often you do depend on a mistake, and okay, the move we expected on the board, there wasn't too many other options there. White's knight coming to protect the pawn in the centre.
There was a very famous interview where Magnus lost his temper.
Oh.
And the interviewer kind of said, well, it wasn't so smooth for you. And Magnus said, well, what do you want from me? What do you want me to just play like a novelty and then I just win the game as easily as that? No, that's not life. And that's not what chess is about. Chess is sometimes a real scrap between two players. There's mistakes on both sides. And it's a fight. And the game is following the analysis that David showed.
Yeah, so very logical play by both sides, and this is the key moment. I think if black gets one move or maybe two more moves, if black can defend that central pawn that we highlighted a few moments ago, then black should be fine, right? Or at least in a pretty safe position temporarily, but...
Yeah, there's a couple of options there. I mean, you can attack that pawn either with your C pawn or E pawn immediately. I mean, the slower approach maybe gives Magnus something to play against in the long run if he can still break, but yeah, black's solid. He's only okay. So Magnus has gone for the more aggressive idea, and I feel in a must-win situation, it makes sense to attack the centre as quickly as you can.
Yeah, and I'm going to put this question to both of you, but also to our Twitter audience. Do you think Magnus will be able to make a comeback, judging from this position?
Simon.
All our viewers, what do you think?
I will.
Think he's going to do it?
I will say flip a coin again.
No, you have to commit yourself to decision.
I have to commit. Well, it is Magnus. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And now
Yes.
David has to say no, probably.
yeah.
So,
David say no.
I'll let you go first so I can say the opposite.
I was going to do that as well. I was going to go the opposite to whatever David said because it makes it a bit more interesting. So that's how close
I always
my
force you
decision
guys
is.
to disagree.
Yeah, disagreement is
Disagree.
the spice of life. And tweet us, what do you think? Do you think Magnus will be able to make this comeback? And as always, we really love
So what do you think,
where you
Ivanka?
watch the selfies. Wait, chess champs. So tweet us using hashtag chess champs. What do I think?
Yeah.
Looking at this position, I'm going to side with you, Simon.
Okay.
I think he's going to do it.
So, right.
It's just the body language feels a bit off. He spent a long time up to this point, Magnus. He spent around a third of his time already, down to 10 minutes. Jorden, okay, I'm surprised Jorden is thinking. I was going to say we'll learn a lot by the speed of Jordan's next few moves, but it feels like Jorden, this is not the type of position you go into as black, where it's very one-sided. You're just playing for the draw, unless you know everything there is to know, unless you have studied all the small details. I do know that in some kind of chats with other players, they have mentioned that Jorden, he's so creative, has so many ideas, but sometimes maybe forgets the tiny little details here and there, doesn't double-check things as much as the other top players. I think they said this on the Chess24 video series with Peter Heine Nielsen, Laurent Fresnay and Jan Gustafsson, the kind of team behind Magnus. They said Jorden, so creative, comes up with everything, but they need to double-check his analysis. And that could be the case here, because he's paused and for 2 minutes now in a very natural move from Magnus. He should know what to do here as black. Otherwise, you're just going to lose a pawn. Black's pawn in the centre under fire and not so easy to protect.
It's quite. I mean, a move you'd like to play is just to defend it with your bishop, to bring a piece out, defend it. Hopefully, more exchanges happen, but that just runs into a pawn push, which attacks the rook. So I don't think you can play this natural move, because after this one, we see the Prague rook, don't we? The pragmatic Prague rook, and it doesn't have a good square. So I don't believe any exchange sacrifices will work here. So you can't play the natural defensive move. The other problem, David, I'm sure, is if you push the pawn on, well, now you get a real imbalance in structure. And again, this same push could be very annoying. I mean, black's king is a real target, and the black pawn in the middle is a bit of a weakness. So it doesn't seem straightforward to know what the answer is to Magnus's move, actually.
Yeah, and Magnus's last move, just to highlight it once more, pushing this pawn forward, it does create some tension here. As mentioned, the pawn cannot be captured because the black queen is actually undefended, so the black pawn is pinned. And you have to, surely, if you want to play this opening, you have to know what to do against an obvious move like Magnus's threatening to take this pawn. What is Jorden thinking about? I think he might well push on, but...
Probably has to push on. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's got really any other option. I mean, you don't want to defend the pawn with your pawn. I mean, you're just going to be a lot worse, but you're going to be in a horrible position against the best player in the world in such structures.
Yeah, isolated pawn here would just be terribly weak. This white bishop as well, attacking it permanently. So Jorden has indeed chosen the other option. He's pushed on, and Magnus is going to try and destabilise this pawn first. Remember, this pawn's still pinned along the D line. So now you just have to protect it. You can't continue pushing this pawn. It would just go too far behind enemy lines, so you have to protect it. And we see a quick trade. And we'll see Jorden recapture this pawn, surely with his own pawn. And it's about whether this isolated pawn now is a weakness as well. I like Simon's idea of pushing forward, kicking back the black rook, and creating this really nice pawn chain. Also, this white bishop coming to life on the diagonal. Still not 100% clear, but imbalanced enough for Magnus to try and create some winning chances.
Yeah, I have to say I love that pawn pattern that you you showed. And I liked what you said about pawns. Like they need friends. I'm going to remember that now. They need friends to hold hands.
They need support when they go up the board, don't they?
Exactly.
Generally, they need their
much nicer than
brothers and
saying pawn chains.
Yeah,
That
it's like a bike chain, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean,
that sounds a bit boring. Friends sounds a bit more like
friends.
Friends. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
In-betweeners, if you're not sure where that came from. Great TV programme, that.
It's a fantastic TV programme.
Oh.
Yeah, meanwhile, Jorden's last move, the speed with which he played it, means that maybe he's still in preparation. Maybe he studied this before or just needed a few minutes to recall what he'd looked at, because black's last move does look a bit weird. Yes, the black rook's on an open file now, the C file, but it doesn't help to protect this pawn in the centre that Magnus is going for. Look on Magnus's screen. He's about to bring his rook behind his queen, lining up against Black's pawn, the isolated pawn in the centre of the board. That pawn is doomed. No way to save it now. You just have to look for tricks with Black. And the evaluation bar liking Black's position suddenly. But
do you think this could be a case of like a little bit of bluff from Jorden, that he's seen this position, he's going to whip his bishop out to like e6, and he knows that the ending, after a lot of whipping off, that's a lot of whipping saying, I don't know why I'm doing that, but he knows that the ending is going to lead to, well, the position is going to lead to an equal ending, and he's just sort of slowing down. Because sometimes if, you know, you might have analysed something, and to kind of double trick your opponent, you don't want to rush the moves out because your opponent smells a rat. You want to sort of slow it down a little bit and just sort of, you know, get him into the position you want. Is that possible here?
It's possible. That's the type of thing I notice a lot of young people do. I used to do it when I was younger myself. You pretend you have no idea what's going on, and then suddenly, once you've lured your opponent in, like you say, it's suddenly bang, 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 you show them, you know, the next few moves of the plan going forward. But he's paused again, Jorden.
I've done that when I've set a trap. A prepared trap, you know, I'm like, well, when I was a kid, not now, I don't do those kind of things anymore.
It's like, look behind you.
Like, yeah. I've never seen this position before, and then when they play, it's like, yeah, you kind of like immediately sit up and you're like, oh, you've fallen for something bad. Yeah, Jorden developing the light squared bishop.
Yeah, so White can go one pawn up. White's queen can just zoom up the board, 2 squares, grab Black's isolated pawn in the centre, and White will be a pawn up. But that endgame, as Simon mentioned, Black is very active in that endgame suddenly. Black's rook on the c-file on an open line. Not clear at all whether Magnus will have enough firepower left to win that one. So I'm expecting him to grab the pawn, to take the pawn, because why not? Why not go up on material and at least have something to hold on to for later? But a long, long way to go before Magnus can dream of turning this one into a win. Jorden, meanwhile, looking very calm, very relaxed. And yeah, it'll be interesting. That's the one difference, I think, with esports and over-the-board chess. It's harder to bluff your opponent maybe in the esport arena, especially with no time on the clock. In long chess, you can kind of sit back, you have 2 hours, you can say, oh yeah, I'm pretending not to know what's going on. You can
especially as a kid,
gesture a bit.
I think we've all mentioned you do these things more as a kid, don't you? Like, for some reason, you're like, oh no, blundered my queen. They take the queen, you're like, checkmate. You're like, it's like, yeah. But it doesn't really work when you get older, does it?
You still do that, don't you, Simon?
Bring it back.
Yeah, you caught me out again. I'm like, oh no, you know, the biggest, like...
It's the confidence of youth, you know. I mean, I remember one kid telling me, well, his opponent had a mate in 2, but his opponent decided to have some fun and deliver a mate in 3, you know, because he had all the time in the world. So the kid just said, you know what, if he's not going to checkmate me immediately, I'm going to wait until my clock runs down, all 45 minutes of it. And his parents were like talking to me and saying, oh my God, what can we do? How can we stop this? But the kid was adamant, no, you know, I'm going to make him wait.
So, I mean, what's the funniest thing you've done as a kid? I mean, I can remember... there's, well, loads that I've done, but we won't go there. I mean, I remember one day when I was really young, and I offered my opponent a draw. I was like 8 years old, and he said, yeah. And I said, actually, I've changed my mind. and then he burst out crying. Yeah, I was only 8. He was 8. No, we're both 8 years old. If it was an adult, it'd be quite funny. And then he called the arbiter over, and I was like, oh, I thought I'd actually play on. And I was like, you know, and it's like, okay, I'll take the draw. So, yeah, just burst out crying. I'm like, oh, God.
That happened to me once as well. I offered a draw, and I thought it was perpetual check, but I was playing against an adult, so I was maybe 12 years old at the time. And he kind of said no, he'd like to play on. And then I was so happy when he said no, because I just realised I actually had more than a perpetual check. I had checkmate. Ooh. And then, you know, I made my move, and he goes, oh, yeah, it's a draw, isn't it? And then he tries to stop the clock, and I'm like, no. It was a one-time offer. Play. And I felt a bit bad, because it was an adult, and I was like this pretentious kid.
And then you won the game, right?
Yeah, of course I won the game. I think it was my only point in the tournament, but yeah.
Take it.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I mean, back to the game, David. I mean, it looks like... you know, Black has a lot of pressure. Is he going to win the pawn back? I mean, if he does, then it's looking fine for Jorden.
Yeah, I think Jordan's done a great job. So the queens did come off. White is 1 pawn up, but this last move by Black, extremely clever. Maybe Magnus missed this one, because now Jorden looks destined, as Simon says, to win his pawn back. And how is Magnus going to even keep his winning chances alive? maybe Magnus, this is the key moment. Because if he doesn't find something now, he's losing his pawn. This is a pin, after all, and if white does nothing, for example, if white pushes a pawn forward, then black can play bishop takes pawn, utilising the fact that this white pawn is pinned. If you take this bishop, then the white rook drops behind that pawn, and suddenly, whoops, also a pin on this file. So, yeah, it's looking scary. This is a big threat. Bishop takes pawn. You can't prevent it in many ways. You don't really want to put your white rook on a bad square because, OK, you're attacking a pawn, but after black removes that threat, this rook is stuck, this rook is stuck, both defending pawns, and no way forward. Black has an easy inroads as well into your position. The black rook, if it finds itself on the second rank, will lead to a great position now. Jorden here would be very, very happy. Magnus reluctant to put his rook on a bad square, but otherwise, do you have to trade off bishops? But now you give yourself a bad pawn structure as well. These pawns are weak. This pawn is weak. Two isolated pawns there. Looking good for black, to be honest. Looks like black should be pretty safe. And I'm struggling to see a move even, Simon. It's all about this threat and how do you stop it? Not just that one, actually, but also the black rook coming in.
Yeah, no, I agree. And he's also, Magnus tanked quite a lot of time here, probably realising that, yeah, you know, some great prep, I feel, from Jorden, actually, and he sort of recalled what he was memorising. And he's probably just thinking now, how do I get, OK, I'm equal, but how do I get a position which has some imbalance in it? Because even if it's equal, I need an unbalanced position. How do I do that? And, well, I can't really see how he does it at the moment, to be honest.
If it's only bishops on the board with level pawns, it's a draw. If it's only rooks on the board with level pawns, it's a draw. Magnus's margin for error here is tiny, and OK, he decides to push this pawn forward. This was one that we didn't consider because it looks like black is about to take a pawn now with the black bishop. And Magnus, did he just react there? Did he yawn or did he say something to himself? Either way, I think black is completely fine. There we go. That pawn drops. So now level material on the board. This is Magnus's idea, but I don't think it's going to get anywhere.
At least he's sort of, again, unbalanced the pawn structure at least, because he's got a majority on the king side against his opponent's majority on the queen side. Shouldn't be enough, I mean, can he win the pawn on b7 now, or does black just play bishop to some square like c2 here?
Yeah, he can also...
Or rook c3.
Yeah, bishops, move the bishop and also maybe defend the pawn.
So there are some small traps in the position. Yeah. You guys are discussing a few moves there. So this bishop attacked, this pawn also attacked, double attack there. And you want to deal with both of them. If you defend your bishop with your rook, then actually that loses on the spot. Because this, again, it's all about the pins, and this bishop is now pinned on the third rank. You can't move the bishop because the rook behind it will fall. So this bishop now will drop. So that would be a losing blunder for Jorden. If you drop back your bishop, then suddenly white does have a small advantage because white can take a pawn back with a nice active rook now. White's a pawn up again. So maybe the move is this one, but you have to calculate well because this also walks into a pin. It's all about the pins in this game, and suddenly the black bishop can't move because of the tension on this file. You have to be super careful here. If you're careless and just push your pawn forward, then I think white is going to win by bringing the bishop forward. And, OK, we might be headed in this direction. Suddenly, you break the connection between black's rook and black's bishop with your own bishop here. And if the black bishop jumps out the way, then bishop takes pawn, check is deadly, winning the black rook at the end. Coming out with a rook versus bishop advantage. Wow, Magnus didn't go for this. What? I'm shocked. I thought this was the only way to keep the game going because now, after bishop takes pawn, it's level material. And look how symmetrical it is, the position now. Dead draw. I think. How are you ever going to win this game now? OK, he offers a trade of rooks. Oh, this is Magnus's idea. But even if you trade, even if you give white everything he wants, attacking this pawn, you can just defend with your rook. And this should still be a draw. Little bit of hard work to be done there by Jorden, but he should hold this one now.
Getting close to a match win. Has he won a lot against Magnus before, Jorden?
No.
Will this be a huge moment, basically, for him?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He's, well, barring the win from earlier on today, he's never won a game, actually, against Magnus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, he lost one game, and then there was a whole series of draws. But, of course, being his second, and I I think they were joking that Jorden was Magnus's punching bag in terms of online, not online chess, blitz chess, and you know, trying out ideas. And
they played a lot of blitz chess in the run-up to the World Championship match as training. He was a bit of a sparring partner for Magnus, and I shouldn't give away my source, but I heard that the score was very one-sided. So this is going to be a big breakthrough for Jorden.
Wow. That is very cool. He is only 22, I think.
Yeah.
Jorden van Foreest, a very young chess player with a bright chess future ahead of him. And this is going to be a big moment in his career if he is able to hold the draw in this game and win the match, winning one game. It's looking bad for Magnus to get that win that he needs, I guess.
Yeah, if anyone can squeeze blood out of a stone, it is Magnus Carlsen, especially in an endgame like this one. He is an endgame expert after all. White has a small, tiny little advantage because White has a target. Black's pawn on the left side, very, very weak, and Black's rook stuck defending it. And also White's king is closer to the centre now, but it shouldn't really be enough. It's hard to imagine a winning plan here.
No, I mean, if Jorden could exchange both the pawns on the queen side, that'd be just dead, completely dead. So I'm wondering if somehow he can try to liquidate and do that. So I don't think it's so easy, but maybe with the bishop coming back to attack White's pawn, and then putting more pressure on it with the rook could help him. But yeah, I mean, the White king's now coming towards the centre, and White has a slightly easier position to play. So it's not over. There's play left in this position, and I wouldn't want to defend this position against an extremely strong player. I think it'd still be tough.
Yeah, and we could also see from a lot of the tweets that were shown on the screen that a lot of people believed in Magnus's ability to win, and they were saying that he looks actually much better today than he did yesterday.
Yep. Magnus, at least this is the type of position that he can play on forever, right? You can play 50 moves, 60 moves, 70 moves, tire out your opponent.
Oh, your favourite 180.
Grind like a grandmaster. That's the motto.
Grind like a grandmaster. That's quite an interesting name for a course, David. Where did you get the inspiration for that? From your own games?
Oh, that's a nice chess course.
From my own games.
Any other grandmasters? Yeah, lots of grandmasters like grinding, don't they?
Boris Gelfand, the ultimate grinder, especially in endgames like this one.
Yeah.
Isn't grinding also a type of dance? So you're going to have a little gif then as your kind of cover. David doing a little dance
I meant
like that.
on the chessboard.
Woo!
Whoa.
We're tearing down the studio.
Destroy like a grandmaster. A wheel just came off.
Really?
That happened to me.
Well done, Simon. I don't know.
You guys, calm down now.
Get excited whenever David says grind like a grandmaster.
That's how exciting this endgame is, you know?
Yeah, and Black advancing a pawn forward on the right, and well, Magnus developing his bishop, improving it, and well, we did ask for memes, and well, Erik Janssen did deliver. Because he shows a picture of Carlsen dressed for his game against Van Fries.
Oh, that's quite clever.
That's very good.
Nice one.
That's a good one.
Very good, Eric.
And female nurse, she references David's Hulk moment.
Ooh,
No! I mean, that's going to go down in the history books.
I haven't seen that before, actually. That's a good one.
I like it.
No.
Yeah, meanwhile, a couple of moves, no real progress for Magnus, but he's about to start pushing his pawns on the king side, on this right half of the board. I can't imagine him winning this one. Simon, you just you reacted to that one, though.
When you go passive, it's always a bit, makes it tough. And yeah, I can see it's obviously still a draw, but I think Jordan's now gone for the policy of just sitting there. He's literally just going to sit here, keep his pieces where they are, and hope Magnus can't make progress. And it's a dangerous policy, that one. There's no way Magnus can get through. Jordan's gone back, but I don't know. Still, I've just seen Magnus do magic in so many positions like this. He does grind like a grandmaster. He really does. The ultimate grinder.
Yeah.
You and him, you're the grinding posse. I mean, David. I say David's a grinder because of his moves on the dance floor. No, because of his games, his long games, and you two are phenomenal at getting blood out of a stone.
Well, Magnus did kind of dedicate his Game 6 super long grinding win in the World Championship match to David. being so inspired by those long games.
But you know, I do think David takes it to the next level.
I have nothing better to do than sit at the chessboard. So.
You love it so much.
I really do. There's something wrong with me. I don't know why. I can't explain it.
So,
Who is your biggest inspiration, David? Where did you get this grinding style from?
I think maybe it's because I had some books about Capablanca, about Karpov when I was young. I played through some games of Ulf Andersson, another great endgame expert, and I just found beauty in those tiny little kind of tricks that they set, or their patience and their stamina. And I treat it like a sport. Sometimes you just have to tire out your opponent.
Yeah.
I know that when I play these guys, I'm not better than them, but maybe I have more energy or more kind of, maybe
Stamina.
Stamina, keep the games going for longer. So that's the strategy. And if Magnus wins this game, it will go down in, I think, his top 10 endgame grinds.
Ooh.
So
could make it in any year, no? Any books he does in the future or something.
yeah.
Or any chessable courses.
Possibly, yeah.
He's made some progress. He's forced the Black King backwards, now trading a set of pawns. That's not great long term. You don't want to trade off too many pawns, but you have to in order to push forward. And Magnus taking over some territory.
And win and draw. No, sorry, loss and draw is the same for Magnus. He has to win this game to take it to tie breaks.
Yeah, and there we go. Jorden just making life as difficult as possible for the world champion. It's not easy to grind this one out because the white rook, no matter where it goes, will continue to get hit. And it can't sit on this dream square, the white rook, where it puts pressure on a pawn and kind of cuts off the 6th rank because it gets kicked away by the black bishop.
I guess one of the key moves that I see that Black's played so far is where Jorden has positioned his rook. I think that's extremely clever, cutting the white king off. You can see where the rook is, the black rook. It just stops white's king coming towards the queen side. Magnus would love to lift his king up and place it somewhere else, maybe all the way over on the queen side, but he just can't do that. So it is very hard to make progress. I mean, if he can't really exchange too many more pawns. So how does he actually do anything here?
That's the big question for Magnus. He can play around for the next 50, 60 moves. I want this to go over 100 moves. I don't think it qualifies as a proper endgame unless you get over 100 moves. But either way, actually making that final step, setting a trap, that's the hard part.
So a title for a book could be the greatest plus 100 games of chess. And you can, just like,
But then the best thing is, Simon, is that we should get David to annotate every single one of those moves.
Definitely. That will teach him a lesson.
Exactly.
No more long games.
He will never grind out an end game again after that.
I'll do my best 20 move wins and you do your best 100 plus wins. Yeah.
My book will be bigger, longer, because more moves.
You said book.
And, Magnus marched forward with the f-pawn, and that, of course, initiated a trade.
It seemed like the only way to make progress.
It did seem like that, but somehow, trading pawns takes Jorden that one step closer to the draw. Having said that, there's a big threat in the air. Well, the king and the rook, they can be forked if the white pawn reaches the f6 square. So you need to defend against that.
Yeah, that's a deadly check incoming from white's pawn. So you need to either block the advance of that pawn with your own pawn, but then maybe giving away control of some important squares, or you need to run away with the black rook or with the black king. You can't move your bishop right now. You have to do something about that white pawn stepping forward one more square. But if you can trade off one more set of pawns, it's basically guaranteed to be a draw now. Magnus not messing around. He's creating the threats, but Jorden stopping them at every turn.
And this final must-win game for Magnus started at exactly the same time as his favorite football team, Real Madrid. Semi-final against Manchester City, and it's going horribly wrong for Real Madrid as well. Well, actually, there they just scored a goal. Wow. Well, but they are down 2-1 to Manchester City. So Magnus will not be too happy when he sees that as well.
Can't believe you're watching the football.
I'm not watching, I'm just following the score. To give you guys some interesting...
Sitting there watching the football. It's like, wow. I know you're not. I just...
I can assure you I'm not too much drama happening in the Oslo Esports arena today to watch anything else.
Yeah.
But Magnus, I mean, if he ends up not winning this game, he'll be rushing off to watch that football match for sure. It gets him inspired. We've seen that before in the tour last season. He loves his football.
Yeah. He does. And Magnus, of course, needing to go for the kill. And Richard Harding on Twitter shares a selfie with his two GM grandchildren also going for the kill. playing chess.
grandchildren.
Yeah. Potential grandmasters.
Ah, cool.
Yeah. I like to see it when a boy and a girl are playing.
Yeah.
Future generation inspired.
Absolutely. Very cool. Let's hope to see those two in a World Championship match in, what would that be, 20 years, maybe? That would be
Oh,
cool.
no. In this day and age, Kaya, it would be like
10
literally
years.
10 years.
Yeah. With what Pragnananda's doing.
Exactly.
2030, next world champions.
Yeah.
They just get younger and younger. I just how young do you think the next grandmaster will be? You know, what's the record at the moment? Is it 12 years
No,
old?
how-
Right?
12 years in a few months.
Yeah.
12 years.
Can someone be 11 years old and be a grandma? It's only a matter of time, probably, isn't it? So,
I mean, Prag became an
crazy.
international master at 10 years old.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
incredible.
also, what's his name?
Abhimanyu.
Thank you, Abhimanyu Mishra, the youngest. It was during COVID. And now that the kids can play a lot more,
Yeah.
might be a younger one coming.
Yeah, they have better and better resources. The chess engines are getting better, so they can train better. And of course, there's like the chess community is growing, so there's more grandmasters. And of course, now the internet has opened up everything and made absolutely everything so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Who will be the next youngest grandmaster? Who will be the next world champion if Magnus Carlsen decides to walk away from his title? Jorden van Foreest, could he be a future world champion?
It's possible. He's young enough. He's still only 22, but yeah, he'll need luck on his side. Of course, there are so many players in this generation. Whoever becomes world champion will need luck, need things going in their favour. I don't think we'll see an era of dominance like we have from Kasparov, from Carlsen now. I don't think we'll see that for a while. I think we're going to see lots and lots of different players fighting for the title, all similar strength. Unless we see Firouzja.
Do you think at the top it's become closer? Like if you go back to the days of Kasparov, he had quite a significant advantage over other players, as you could say Magnus does as well. To be fair, he is quite a lot better than the players, but they are kind of catching up now, and all the other players are just so similar in strength now. There's so many of them who are just really good, and the margins are so small. I mean, that's how strong people have become, I think, really, and they're just incredibly strong.
Yeah, but it's, in a way, it's kind of a little bit of a pity if there's so many grandmasters kind of switching the title backwards and forwards. I mean, because we always remember the great rivalries, like, you know, you mentioned Kasparov. You know, for me, I grew up on watching his games against Karpov. And, you know, it was so close, so tense. And, you know, you're always rooting for your hero to win. And that's something that you can't quite get if there's so many good players at the top. So I really do hope that someone comes and starts challenging for the crown a little bit more permanently.
But we've seen that before, and it was very exciting with Botvinnik. He lost his title a few times, and then he always regained it. I mean, we talk about Mikhail Tal, one of the greatest world champions. He won it off Botvinnik, but he lost it 1 year later. Smyslov won it, lost it back. So, yeah, still exciting no matter what happens. But, OK, that's for generations to come. For now, we've got to focus on the current world champion. And he's trying, but not so far succeeding to win this game. Jorden, he's done a great thing. Look how the black pawns are on dark squares, completely blockading on that colour complex. Magnus with a light squared bishop can't break through. And, OK, he's gone active with the white rook. I'm expecting maybe the black king to start moving over now towards the centre, towards that white rook. The black bishop could also move. You could maybe even give a check with the black rook first. The only thing you have to really be careful of here is maybe trading a set of rooks off and allowing white's king to make a dash for that black pawn, that lone black pawn on the left. Because then maybe white is in time, but it's hard to imagine that happening.
I mean, I guess there's some checkmate nets that white could try. You know, or at least force the black king to... The black king is in a bad square. The white king is in the centre of the board. The black king is a little bit boxed in. So if white can put his bishop on 2 squares forwards, for example, or then check the king, you can get the black king to the side of the board. So you can sort of play around with some ideas, but they shouldn't work, of course. But, you know, white has got slightly better chances, if anything, slightly.
White's still the one playing for the win, that's for sure. But that's why I like this last move, Simon. You mentioned the black king. There's a chance he would have got caught on one side of the board, so why not centralise it, if possible? And now it's heading towards that white rook. Chances disappearing. Jorden, he's looking a bit nervous, fidgeting there on the left, but he's played great so far, defended really, really well, the Dutchman.
Yeah, he has defended incredibly well. And we do have a question from Chris Paul Collin to David. And it says, what is the most satisfying endgame for you?
Let me think. There's been too many.
Just the way you laughed there was satisfying, you know. It was like just recalling them.
Might have to wait for my chessable course on endgames to find out. But a lot of satisfying endgames. Maybe one of them was beating Luke McShane, one of my kind of kryptonite players, one of my nemesis, a few years ago in the German league, in the Bundesliga, in a very difficult endgame. It looked very equal for a long time, but I had the two bishops against the bishop and knight, and I managed to grind him down eventually. So,
how many moves?
I think it wasn't 100, unfortunately. It was maybe only 70 or 80. It was just a light workout that day.
Well, Magnus, he is playing a long game here. One game has finished here in this round 4 today. Duda and Liemle a draw, so that means we will have tie breaks today. They tied the rapid match, and now they're going to play blitz tie breaks. Duda, he won his blitz tie break yesterday against Mamdyarov, so he will be feeling confident on his birthday today as well. Giri and Mamdyarov as well, if they play a draw, they will head to tie breaks. The bar is in the middle, so maybe we will have 2 tie breaks and even 3 if Magnus wins this game. But the bar is just not moving away from 0.
No, that's right. And now the Black King has got active, so even more difficult here to imagine a win for White. White's rook might well go after Black's pawn on the right half. The f6 pawn, there we go. That white rook about to take a pawn. But Black's bishop can also take a pawn now as well. And that would just be a trade. Not too much to get excited about there for White. Black does have the option, I was going to say, of marching his king towards the centre, but maybe that's not so... maybe that's not so practical. You don't need to get too ambitious with the Black King here. I think that maybe is fine as well, but you need to do a bit of calculation. The safest move is to pick up the Black Bishop and go and grab this White pawn.
Yeah.
And there we go. It happens. A pawn trade, and with the more pawns that disappear, the closer we get to the
Don't go
draw.
forwards here.
Yeah,
don't
one
go
trap.
forwards.
Don't go to the centre.
He went forwards, but if he went the other way, it could have been, well, it would have been checkmate. So.
Maybe we can just show this on the board. You can never relax too early. Just one small trick that the world champion set for his young opponent, checking the king. And as Simon mentioned, if you went forward, you normally want to centralise the king, but this would have ended in checkmate. You get caught in amongst White's pieces. So, of course, he didn't fall for this Jorden. Instead, he went the other way. He marched this way, and now this black pawn... Whoops, sorry, me and my arrows. This black pawn is about to start pushing forward. So both sides have a passed pawn. They're going to balance each other out, and we're headed most likely towards a draw. Let's go back to the players. It's desperate times now for Magnus and all his fans.
Yeah, looks like he will lose this match. Magnus Carlsen. Drama in the Oslo Esports Cup. Pragnananda, sitting in his hotel room, has been there for a long time. He finished after 3 games today, Prag, with a win. And he will be in sole lead after day 5, with only 2 days left to play in this major. Imagine if the 16-year-old wins the first major in the Welterweight Champions Chess Tour 2022. I know you said it, David, but it's just so incredible if it happens.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be history-making, groundbreaking, incredible achievement if it happens. And he's looking odds-on now to do it, maybe. Who can stop Prag?
I wonder who he has left to play. I mean, he's got some tough games, I think. Is it
Jan-Christoph Duda.
Duda's
in
really
round 6.
dangerous, yeah. So
And I'll just check.
yeah. Magnus there, you can see. Look at that face. He knows he's going. I think he realises he's just going to lose this match now.
Yeah,
Giri in round 7.
2 tough matches then for Prag, basically. Very tough matches, those ones.
Okay, and Magnus, he repeated the position once, but remember, a draw is basically the same as a loss for him. So now he's trying everything. He's pushed the white pawn, but this is a really classy move by Van Foreest, locking down completely the position. Black's bishop and Black's rook completely stop that white pawn from advancing, and Magnus, he's got to be the one who's careful here to save the draw. He gives a check. The Black King can move pretty much anywhere, and nothing to be done. That black pawn is too dangerous now. You have to keep your white rook behind it, and we will see the position repeat itself. Okay, Magnus still playing for the win. Brave guy.
Wow, he might as well.
Might as well, right?
A loss is the same as a draw, I guess. So,
Doesn't care about the tour ratings. It's all about winning the match. And Black's pawn 2 squares away from promotion now. The problem is the white king, anytime it goes towards the black king, it just gets checked away by the black rook. And okay, Magnus stopping the pawn with his bishop instead. Clever move, he's keeping the game alive, but it's hard to envisage anything going wrong for Jorden here. He gives a check.
Maybe king c3 can even come if you want to try that at some point. You don't need to, but...
Okay.
Give a check, he can go after white's bishop.
Yeah.
He can go after white's pawn.
Actually, if he goes after white's bishop, then the king and the rook have aligned themselves in a
what's happening?
really inconvenient diagonal.
The bar just shot up.
Yeah, I think actually black had a really strong move there. He could have gone after white's bishop, but no, we see a trade of rooks and a draw is almost inevitable now. Nothing to be done. There we go. Bishop only on the board, but it is a draw.
It's over, a win for Jorden Foreest in the match against Magnus Carlsen. We did see a congratulation, I think, from Magnus to Jorden, but